We've said that we have 4 DNA elements of healthy Christian community at Christ Community Church: relationships, maturity, care, and encouragement. In this video, we're going to look at the DNA element of care. Specifically, we want to see every community group in our church caring for one another's spiritual, physical, and relational needs. Here are the key passages we use to explore this DNA element. Romans 15:7. Therefore welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you, for the glory of God. Acts 2:44 and 45. And all who believed were together and had all things in common, and they were selling their possessions and belongings, and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And Galatians 6:1 and 2. Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. From these verses, we see that Christian communities demonstrate their faith in the kingship and the grace of Christ by offering care to one another. From Romans 15:7, we see that Jesus' welcoming us into a relationship for the glory of God is meant to set a pattern for us to also welcome others for the glory of God. That means we're to offer a relationship to those in need. It also means that in that relationship, we should seek to help that person live for God's glory. From the Acts 2 passage, we see the radical practice of Christians giving up their own wealth and possessions to meet the needs of others, so that no Christians suffered physical lack. And the Galatians passage shows us that we are to care for others' spiritual needs as well. Welcoming someone into fellowship is an act of grace, but helping someone grow out of sin into a deeper relationship with Christ is also an act of grace. So our call to care for others has a restorative dimension. It's meant to move others toward maturity in Christ. Our community groups should be places where this kind of care is happening. People are welcoming one another and showing hospitality to one another. People are either directly helping with physical needs, or at least connecting those needs to the resources of the church. And people are bearing one another's spiritual burdens and helping one another along in Christ. This requires both a deep relationship that is our first community DNA element, and the commitment to growing maturity in Christ that's our second. So with that foundation, let's consider what it means in practice for groups to care for one another. Spiritual care looks a lot like things we've already discussed from other videos. It starts with having relationships of hospitality and depth, where we are in one another's homes and in one another's hearts enough that we're growing this comfortable, intimate relationship. Even professional care, like counseling or social work, takes time and relationship to help people deal with issues. So spiritual care is built on time and relationship in the same way. You as a leader should set the pace on intimacy and vulnerability by leading and opening up about your life. This can take time, which is okay. This also looks like the practices of confession, accountability, and formation that we looked at in the maturity video. We want our group members to feel comfortable acknowledging their sins and struggles, and also be looking for ways to grow in godliness. This means that on the one hand, we should set the ground rule that we should be able to confess anything and have it received with grace. Any struggle, any doubt, any failure should be able to be shared, not so it can be excused, but so we can be open to hearing the gospel afresh and having it shape our lives. Maybe that happens in groups of men and groups of women, but that should be something that we affirm with our groups. And the other side of that, connected to the maturity DNA element, is that we should both give and receive exhortation, correction, or just further questions with grace. Some of us struggle to receive direction from others because it makes us feel guilty or defensive or both, but we're called to do that. And some of us need to learn how to offer encouragement or counsel to others in a gracious way. As we practice that as a group, we'll almost definitely have conflicts or differences that arise and have to be addressed at further conversation. But that's part of growing in receiving and giving care for spiritual needs. For physical care, I really want to emphasize that the leadership of the church wants to be involved with any care needs like this that arise. Both your elder and I want to know if a group member has a sickness, a financial need, or anything else like that would require extra care. So while you might find opportunities to care for one another's needs directly, like helping someone move or setting up a meal train, we want to work with you and support you in offering physical care to your group members. What I'd really recommend is that if a physical need comes up, you ask the group member if they mind you sharing that need with the church leadership, and if they're okay with it, passing it on to me and to your elder. For relational needs, there's kind of a simple part and a complicated part. The simple part is that communities should supply a reliable relationship in a person's life. This doesn't necessarily mean you'll click and become best friends right away, but as you show hospitality to one another, you'll get to know one another well and pray with and encourage one another. You should see those relationships deepening over time. The members of our communities should be able to count on one another relationally. Doing just fun activities together, either as part of your group time or outside of group time, can be a big way to help build relationships. And you may sometimes have a schedule disrupted or preempted because you're talking someone through a major issue like serious suffering. That's the simple part of offering relational care. The complicated part comes when you have situations that disrupt the natural formation of relationships in a community. Either you have conflict, or there's a personality quirk or lack of self-awareness that leads to relational problems. These are complicated issues. I'm going to either recommend or make a few resources to help deal with some common relational issues in community groups. But if you have conflict within your group, or someone who doesn't engage relationally or who asks too much relationally of the group, please let me know about that so that I can help you think through it. That's our third DNA element, that our group members care for one another's spiritual, physical, and relational needs.